Well, a popular idea still in circulation, true in antiquity and especially since the 1960s, is that what goes around comes around. By when you do something or say something, you let other people hear you. Other people will say it or repeat it, or you doubt it and make it popular and discussive and or discursive. But the issue isn't so much that that happens, and it's the reason that you have round arches in ancient Rome and very round bridges all over China and so on, is that if it's true to some extent, I would like you to try something for me, and I think it's worthwhile. I'm going to tell you little short stories, and I want you to look for reading between the lines in a way, looking for the other meaning, because sometimes it's what the people say, or it's even what they do. If one punches another, then that's what they did, and that matters more. But look for what's happening as well as what's saying. And if someone says something and then they say, I didn't say that, and then they get into a fight over it, then there's a between the lines. One says, I did, and you did, and I don't, and you don't, and didn't, and so on. It's all going to remain invisible until you start looking for that missing element, reading between the lines, the hidden meanings. Not intentionally hidden. They might be, but they don't have to be. But I wanted you at least to get used to the idea of looking for all the potential meanings behind and between things. So here's one. I didn't start out, I'm sorry to say, being a good little kid. When I was 2 years old, well, watch everybody that's 2 years old. They knock things off over the spill things and break things and punch people and kick things, and they're not all good things to do because they haven't learned the rest. Somebody has to say, oh, don't hurt the kitty cat. Pat the kitty cat. That's a good boy. That's a good little girl. I was 2 years old. We had been living in Philadelphia and then in New York City. So I walked slowly, and I had already learned how to throw a ball and how to kick a ball. And I would kick a ball across the living room, and somebody in there would slide it back over to me, and I would kick it back again, and that went on. That was our game for a while, so I knew how to use my leg. Now, here's a funny thing. I was walking out straight ahead. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't thinking of anything. There wasn't any dog barking anywhere. And from the left side, a dog emerged on other property and started walking across to the right. And for no particular reason, historically or otherwise, the dog was walking at about the same speed I was. I didn't speed up. I didn't slow down. I didn't have a plan. I was not afraid of the dog. And the dog did not growl and did not bare his teeth to me, which would have been very scary. It just walked in front of me. And when I got close enough, I kicked the dog because I had kicked the ball. And that's about all there is to it. No animosity, no attitude. I'm really sorry I did that. I didn't know how sorry I'd be for the rest of my life, because that's not a good thing to do. The dog squealed. I had kicked it accidentally perfectly in the ribs. If I broke or cracked a rib, I'm sorry still. Mother was in the window, and she saw beloved, perfection, Christ-like, angelic-like person kick a dog. What's the matter with him? My beloved, perfect child just kicked a dog, hurt another animal, another living thing, just like her and the trees and the grass and the whole world. And so it showed in her voice. She had no plan, but she saw this. And the minute she saw this, she said, "David!" Oh my God. Oh my God. I heard her tears through her sound. My mother was crying my name. I'd never heard it. And now I knew this was a bad, bad thing to do. She never sounded like that before, and I hope never again. That's the longest story. But you get the idea, don't you? We learn by what happens to us. If we're going to be empathetic, something has to happen in your life that shows you what empathy is, or better yet, begins to test you about what morality is. Yeah, there's good and bad morals. Or there's morals and they consist of all of your activities and the ones that they stack on the side of the good things that you like to see in people. Well, I knew what she liked to see. By that time, I knew very, very well forever what she did not want to see in Beloved ever again. Well, that's part of it, plus you're supposed to be thinking about reading between the lines. And the lines here are, what's a good thing and what's a bad thing? And how are you going to know? I had gone to Europe, and I had spent a year in Europe. I had volunteered to help build orphanages for all the children who had no parents left after the war. In France, in Boège, I worked with the Civil International. And in Germany, I worked for the government, and there was a Jugendsiedlung Friedensdorf. Jugendsiedel's a little kid. So I found an English student there about my age too, maybe 20, 21, 22, 23, whatever it was. What was I? And I said, "Hey, can you spare some money?" And I've run completely out. My wallet is actually empty. I'm down to change, and I had 800 when I came over here. But they didn't pay you if you volunteered to build buildings. You were a volunteer, no salary. He said, "Well, sure. What do you need?" But before I actually answered, he had reached into his lapel pocket and pulled out a $20 bill, American money, and gave it to me. I said, "Wow, thank you." $20 in 1949 would buy about $200 worth of stuff. So I said, "Well, what's your address?" And I thought it was probably London, and it was, actually. As he was doing it, I could see it. And then while he was writing his address, he turned and looked up at me, and he said, "What do you want this for?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm passing through London on my way home. I've already got tickets on Pan American, so I just have to get myself to London." And he said, "Oh, I thought you wanted to be my friend." And he crumpled up his address and threw it conspicuously into a wastebasket. Read between the lines. And then he thought he'd better explain why he didn't want to bother with that. He said, "I don't know you very well, Dave, but, you and I were in a war. And it was the war to end all wars, wasn't it?" He knew what I had to know. He said, "This is the way it works. When someone is down and out, it'll be obvious to you. Somebody is suffering. Their head's down. They're sitting with their head down between their legs on the corner. They're not even trying to eat. They're so hungry. They're starving to death on the street. That's the one that needs your money. If someone comes up to the window of your car and says, 'My kids aren't eating anything. Can you spare any money?' They won't ask even for $20 now. but they mean get it out of your wallet now. Okay, I get that. And he did shame me. And I think that is maybe the basis of caring about other people. But I don't care what the basis is. Care. Don't just be sympathetic. Sympathy is you just feel sorry for somebody, but that doesn't mean you've done anything. Empathy is what you need. Why did Mother start smoking? I wasn't going to tell you this story, but it's a short one. She started smoking in 1919 when women were allowed to vote. They were allowed to vote. And so by 1920, when she was in college, she went to college till she was 22, she had the vote. And women couldn't even go to a boxing match. Their lives weren't anything. You couldn't own property like the Chinese. All sorts of stuff. It couldn't be in your name because you were a woman. Those things ended one at a time, but the vote changed everything, and Mom started to wear pants. And so you know how the power shifted around in our household. Mother worked for the FBI for a while. She was in the code translating segment of the FBI for about a year. She was earning more than my dad, and he was adding every day, you gotta stop working. It looks bad for me. So she was kindly, and she quit her job, but she was earning more than my dad had ever earned. Well, think what that difference could have meant if the vote had come like 57 years earlier. So she was smoking to celebrate women's equality. She didn't make any other connections. She got the vote, and that meant she could smoke if she wanted to and not be asked to please leave or whatever else was going on. Okay, those are my notions. These have been well-intentioned, and I hope it held your attention. I do apologize for all borderline stuff that I've said. This is all freehand, and I wish it had been written so I could just read it off a screen. I do have notes, but that's just the word, like kick dog. Thanks, guys.